everybody. Welcome to On the Clock with Caroline Clark. I'm Caroline, Chief Brand Officer, Women of Power at Black Enterprise, and we are gathering to help you not count the days, but create the days that count. So, joining us today, we have a wonderful, wonderful guest, a dear friend of mine, Executive Director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program here in New York, which is a fantastic program. She also happens to be a pro tennis player formerly and an international tennis executive. So, Kat Adams, hello, welcome.
Hi, Caroline.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So, Katrina, I didn't mention in your intro, but it's now a part of your story forever, that in this very odd time, you are one of the people who, thank God, can say you survived having the virus. Can you talk to us about what that experience was like, what having it was like, particularly given the fact that you live on your own?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen in the news with COVID-19 mostly has been distraught, distressing, and just sad. I am very lucky to be a survivor. I'm very lucky to have had minor symptoms from the virus. I only had body aches. I had body aches for 2 nights. The second night was worse than the first night, which prompted me to go and get tested. As you mentioned, I travel a lot. I'm at a lot of business meetings and conferences around the nation and the world, and I'm sure I picked it up somewhere in my travels. And it's just, I'm very lucky that I didn't have more severe symptoms, and that I was able to be tested, to know for certain that I had it, and then to be able to overcome it and now be a plasma donor.
Was getting tested difficult?
It was, I would say, because I got it early on before it became, just widespread here in New York as far as not being able to have access to the testing. I was lucky. I went to White Plains Hospital. I'm a scar cell medical patient. They were connected to White Plains Hospital. And so when I called my clinic, that's where I was directed. And, I called a couple times and they told me not to come in because I didn't have enough symptoms, just the body aches. I didn't have a sore throat. I didn't have a fever. So I thought, I didn't have shortness of breath or any other ailments that came with the virus. But I did wake up in the middle of the night drenched the second night, which means I must have had a fever that broke. And so the following morning, I called again and said, don't come in because I didn't have a fever then. But I was persistent. I put on a bandana around my face, put some gloves on, drove to the hospital, and was fortunate enough to be tested. I was teasing people early on that an astronaut came and got me to take me to a quarantine room. But we now know that that was so necessary with the PPE for these nurses and doctors to protect themselves from the virus. And I was able to have a full scale testing. I had a chest x-ray, I had an EKG, I had my blood taken. They'd already prepped me for an IV if I had to have any kind of medicines administered due to the coronavirus. But my chest was clear. I didn't have any other symptoms. They did do the nose swab, which was quite painful, I must add, but necessary. And then I was in and out in 2 hours and came home and self-quarantined. I lived by myself, so it was kind of an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Talk to us about this whole plasma donation reality, because I don't think it's been widely discussed. So tell us how you even found out that you could do this and what that process is like and what the hope is for that.
Yeah, I had a friend that sent a text to say, hey, I know you've had it, you've recovered from it, and here's a link if you want to be a plasma donor. And there were 2 locations. There was the Mount Sinai Hospital, and then there was a Columbia Medical Center. And so I signed up for, put my information in. They ask you, when did you contract it? When were you tested? I was well beyond the 2 weeks of the self-quarantine that everyone has been advising us to do. And so you go in and you get tested, and first they take your blood. They do another test to make sure that you're negative. They test your blood to make sure, up the nose, yes, to make sure that you're negative. And then they tested the blood to see if I had the antibodies, which would prove that I was negative as well, or had it actually. So then I got another call and email about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days later. It happened quickly, to ask if I would then go in and donate my blood for the plasma. And the plasma would save up to three to four lives if it worked. And so that was a no-brainer for me to be able to do that. And I always say things happen for a reason. And for me, I'm someone who always wants to give back, always wants to make a difference. And if this truly was able to make a difference in saving someone's life, then it was worth me getting it in the manner that I did.
Your understanding is that the plasma will be given to patients who are on ventilators or just already in the ICU. Did they discuss with you how it would be used?
They didn't say specifically, but it would be those that were in dire need of needing some assistance. And so my assumption would be those that are in the ICU, because those are the ones that are being treated. And I'm not sure if if it was specifically for those that were on ventilators.
Yeah, I think that, part of what is so difficult with this illness, whether you've had it or you're trying to keep from having it, is there's still so many more questions than answers. So did they discuss with you, given the fact that you have the antibodies and given the fact that they're enough that they can use it to treat other people, whether or not you're immune?
So at the moment, and their response was that I am immune, which is a good thing. And it kind of relaxes me a little bit as I walk outside of my apartment, going for walks or going to the grocery store or what have you, that one, I'm not a carrier, and two, that I can't contract it this season, as far as I know.
Yeah.
There can always be a COVID-20, another strain that comes out, but they don't really know enough yet. So I still have to act as if I can get it, of course, knowing that I can't, but the people around me don't know that I've had it and that I'm now immune. So out of respect for everyone around me, I make sure that I still wear a mask when I go out. I'm still wearing gloves when I go into the grocery stores, because I still don't want to bring those germs back into my environment that is clean as far as I know.
Yeah, like everybody else, I know that this reality has touched every aspect of your life. So you've struggled personally with the virus. I know your father is also elderly and living in another city, and you lost your mom last year. So, particularly difficult, tender time for him. How do you manage having a loved one, other loved ones in other states? You can't get to them. How do you manage the stress and anxiety of all this?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I FaceTime with my dad 2 or 3 times a day, minimum. Yeah, he has underlying ailments, and so it's very concerning. He has home care. He has 2 different people that are coming into the home to look after him during the week. And so it's very concerning. He lives with my brother, and so they have gloves and masks and all the Lysol and everything around the house as people are coming in and out. But the nurses are taking full precaution as well to make sure they're not bringing anything in, but they don't want to take anything out as well. So all I can do is pray and continue to talk to him, keep him positive and motivated, because when you're older, all you do is sit and watch the news. There is no good news on the news, right? So it's all depressing. And he must call me twice a day. Are you still quarantined? Are you still on lockdown? I'm like, yeah, Dad, the same way as you are, pretty much. But trying to get him to really understand all of this is difficult, as his memory is slipping and ailing, and he's forgetful. And so, he's asking the same questions over, but it's, it's okay, because I want him to be comfortable. I want him to realize that he can go outside his door to sit on the patio, because he thinks that he can't even go outside, that it's in the air. Well, they say it's in the air. No, Dad, it's not just flying in the air. You have to be near someone. Right. So trying to get that. So that's a little nerve-wracking for me. But I do communicate often and just pray every day that he stays healthy so that he doesn't have to go to the hospital for any of his other ailments.
Absolutely. You're dealing with the full spectrum of age groups with this because you run the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. As I said, you're deeply involved in tennis across this country and across the world, actually, as vice president of the International Tennis Federation, but particularly with the children in your program in Harlem. First of all, can you just tell us sort of what HJTEP does, and then how all of this has impacted the program and those kids?
Yeah, so the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program, we're celebrating our 48th year, founded in 1972, and it's really to serve mostly the kids in the community of Harlem and in some outlying areas in the metropolitan area, providing them tennis, education, and wellness components. And we've been very successful with getting our kids through high school into college, some on college scholarships, whether they're playing tennis or through academics. But when you look at this time right now, you know, we are a facility where our kids, we call, can get away for a safe haven. And they can come and be themselves and enjoy the sport and run around and be with their friends and just have a lot of fun while developing their life skills. Well, the week leading into the official shutdown, you know, I was talking to our staff to actually shut down the program on the Friday before the Monday that everything was officially closed. And so it was a good call for us to say, hey, we're canceling until further notice, because at that time it seemed like it was going to be a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And then of course it is where we are today. It's April 21st. And that was around March 12th, March 13th, maybe. And so it's been a long haul. I actually just had communicated with my staff today where we are going to be doing some Zoom calls with each individual group. We have 6 groups of kids, age groups and levels that we work with because we want them to stay connected. We want them to stay engaged. We want them to know that we are still here supporting them. We can't wait to get them back on the tennis court so they can have fun. But it's been troubling. You know, we've sent out a few communications with them. We did a video a couple weeks ago with everyone on the staff saying the same thing and kind of streamed it together where everyone said the entire script. Parents were very appreciative. We got some email responses from that. So, you know, trying to keep our youth motivated, you know, to do the right thing, to stay at home, to be patient, to do their schoolwork. I mean, they're challenging. Not everyone has a tablet or computer at home to be able to do the schoolwork that was administered to them early on. And we do have some online tutoring access for our youth also to log on and get some assistance. But it's very challenging, and you know, we're a nonprofit program. We were supposed to have had our annual gala 2 Mondays ago, and you know, that came and went, so we don't have that income coming from that, and just trying, and no one really has money now, but it's still important for us to get donations, however small or large, that people can send in. So when we do get back up and running, we don't miss a beat. But, you know, my staff is the one that I'm really concerned about, obviously, not working and on unemployment, and it's just challenging for everybody right now across the world.
Yeah, as you look to sustaining programs like this, you know, are there any things that your board has brought to the table, or that you have been trying to think about, given all of the work that you do, that can help, you know, not just Harlem, but other nonprofits figure out, you know, how to get through when times are just so uncertain? How do you sort of galvanize your leadership in a time where there are just more questions than answers?
Well, it's really about reaching out to those that you think that can give. Our board, you know, we've had some board calls, and what we've done, because our gala was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, you know, our board, everyone is paid for their tables. We've had a lot of donations that have come in for that. Not all of them, but we were able to bring in some income from that. I've been able to reach out and lean on some personal friends who have sent in donations. The Bryan brothers were the first to send in a donation to the program. Mike and Bob Bryan, the greatest doubles team in the world. I've reached out to some of my other friends and colleagues who have sent in contributions. And, there's a lot of grants out there right now that we are reaching out to try to bring in the funds. There are so many other programs like ours across the country, and everyone is struggling right now. Many programs, some had a nice reserve that they can fall back on, and many are working, to maintain month to month. And so it's really about making sure that everyone stays inspired, know that this too shall pass, and, we'll get back on our feet and we'll succeed, because at the end of the day, it's really about the kids and making sure that we have all the tools necessary for them to excel in life.
I know you really identify with the kids in your program. You're from inner city Chicago. You understand where they live and what their lives are like. What are your greatest concerns? This disease is overarching in the Black community, as we know. Places like Harlem are getting hit particularly hard, given New York and the epicenter of this. What are your greatest concerns? What keeps you up at night when you think about these kids?
Well, right now we've had some families who have lost family members. We've had staff who have lost family members, and so it's going to be very challenging just to keep people motivated and to not walk around living in fear every day once we come back. We don't know what normal is going to look like. Everyone's lives have been impacted by this in some way or another. And so when you talk about our kids, it's what's the language that we now have to use going forward and staying positive and not really being high strung on focusing on the negative things that may be happening on the court, that they may not be adapting to quickly or in the timely manner that we as coaches and the staff would like. So it's making sure that we are uplifting them, making sure that they know that, we are an open office and we're there to listen, but to uplift them, not just the kids, but the families as a whole, and to let them know that, when this passes and we have to look for the future, but we have to tread the water, I think, lightly, because we don't know if this is going to stir back up. But it's really about preparing ourselves for perhaps another outbreak at the end of the year or the beginning of next year, when the flu season comes and which may bring with it the coronavirus.
Sports, typically in our culture, especially, it's such a central part of everything that we do and think. It helps us dream. It brings us together. It breaks down some of the dividers among us, and it's physical outlet, so that when we're stressed, when we're anxious, being able to whack away at a ball that's flying at you is a therapy in and of itself. So what are your thoughts about the future of tennis in particular, as things sort of do shift and become more flexible? Do you think tennis is uniquely positioned perhaps to thrive in ways that some other sports may be lesser able to do so? What are your thinkings around that?
Well, the sport as a whole is an individual sport, mostly. And so it probably will be one of the first sports that will be welcomed back to activity. When you go out to the park or any tennis court, the 2 people playing tennis or 4 people max on a court, I think it's going to be the easiest one. As we look at some of these states that are lifting their bans and slowly socializing again, tennis will definitely be one of the first sports in the communities where activity is allowed, that they can go back and start playing. When you look at it from a program perspective, you have more than 2 or 4 kids on the court, no more than 6 or 8. So it's still, your social distancing can be there, but we just have to be mindful of that as we get back. But as far as being an outlet, I mean, tennis was, the tennis court was my office for, 30 years, from a junior playing through my professional years, where I could really let go and my true personality could really come out on the court, my joy and my frustrations. And so as we are monitoring our kids and working with our kids when they come back, if they're having a temper tantrum on the court, so be it, because there's a lot that's being cooped up inside of them that they need to release and let go. But we have to learn how to manage that with them and talk them through whatever the issues are, because it's never really about what's happening in that moment with that shot that they missed. It's about something that happened earlier that is inside of them that they're trying to release. So it's a great sport to be able to come back and really be able to exhale and release. But as far as a broader base of being able to be active again throughout the community, throughout the country, and then ultimately the world, I do think that it will be one of those, one of the first ones. It's not a team environment. We're not leaning all over everybody and sweating and pushing up against one another where the challenges are. I mean, we saw, before everything shut down in the NBA where the player tested positive and they just shut it down knowing that, hey, this can easily be transferred. And kudos to Adam Silver and the NBA for recognizing that immediately. They were in mid-games or about to start, and they just shut things down. So, we'll see where we go. I mean, I know the NBA is anxious to get back. The NFL is anxious with the draft and trying to get back into their seasons. Baseball is anxious. This is their season right now. Tennis is a year-round season, and we're definitely anxious. But we know that we are shut down through the middle of July, and it remains to be seen as to what will happen beyond the middle of July, going into the end of the summer, going into the U.S. Open in New York.
Yeah, those of us who are tennis fans, fingers crossed for the Open. But it is pushing us to be innovative and think about how we approach these big events. That's going to be an ongoing thing. You mentioned being cooped up and what a challenge that is for kids. Now, Kat, I happen to know that you are not the type who sits cooped up. You are flying all the time, all over the world, all over the country. You are the first one to say, let's go do this, let's go do that. So I'm really curious, how challenging has it been for you to just be home?
Ooh, Caroline, I've been home 6 weeks. And I told somebody, I don't know if I've been home 6 weeks in 6 years, the way that my schedule was, particularly when I was the president, sitting in the office as the president of the USTA. I was all over the world every week. I'd be away for 2-3 weeks. I'd come home for 2 or 3 days, go away for a week, come home for a day. And that was just how my life was for about 6 years.
I was going to say you're talking about being home for 6 weeks and 6 years. I don't think you were home for 6 days in 6 years.
Yeah, no, it was challenging, but you know what? It's been interesting. I got to know myself. I think we have to take advantage of this time and go inward and understand who we really are, and how we are able to cope with things. I'm very fortunate I have a balcony, so I can get out for some fresh air. I can open the door. I have a great view that I can admire and really kind of relax and look into it. I've been able to get out for walks. So I've taken advantage of some me time. Now I do need some me time to get my hair and my nails and everything else done, but
you look good though, Kat.
In due time that will happen. Hey, you learn how to do things on your own. Let me tell you. I've even spent more time in the kitchen. I am not the cook. I'm not the chef, but I've come up with some pretty good things.
Well, I'm glad nobody else is there to taste test it, but
hey, but it's been good. It's been good. But yeah, it's been challenging. And I would say even more so because I live alone. It's not like I can just look to my right or look to my left and speak to someone. I'm doing it as I am doing it with you on a computer or on a phone or on a tablet. And so I think that's been the toughest part for me, but this too shall pass. And, it's going to be, I'm a busy bee. I like to travel, but I don't think I'm going to be running to the first plane once things open up. It's going to take time, I think, for everyone to get comfortable with traveling again. Again, I'm supposedly immune, so it shouldn't, my concern is not going to be as great as someone who hasn't had it or doesn't know that they've had it. I think millions of people have had it and don't know. They just didn't get tested to confirm that. But maybe these antibody tests that they have come out with, I think Abbott Labs has put that out, some antibody tests out there. and maybe people will be able to know if they've actually had it or not, which will maybe put them at ease when we do start to travel again.
Yeah. Do you structure your days very specifically? Like what have sort of been the coping mechanisms and the self-care things that you've put into place? I heard you bought a Peloton.
I did, but it hasn't arrived yet because they're on back order. The gyms are closed and I need to sweat. Walking is great, but I'm not walking at such a pace where I'm just pouring. So I did buy one. I've ordered it. I'm waiting on it. But hey, kudos to Peloton. You can pay monthly with no financing. So they're making it accessible for everyone. It is not a cheap apparatus to purchase.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to that. But what are we talking about?
How have you set goals for yourself?
Oh yeah. So every day I've had some type of meeting. Whether it's a phone call or Zoom. So between those meetings, I've got my own, I like to do a to-do list as to what I want to accomplish that day, which keeps me focused. It keeps me on track. I think yesterday might have been the first day after a half day that I was kind of like, what am I going to do? Now I do have a project, and once I dive into it, I know it's gonna take my time for at least 4 or 5 days.
Right.
So I took a couple days break before I go into that, and that's editing. I'm on my first pass of editing for my book that was supposed to come out in July. It's now been pushed to March of 21, since there are no books that are being pushed, off the shelves right now or out of the warehouses because no one's traveling. So it gives me a little more time to focus on that, and so I'll dive into that probably tomorrow and through the rest of the week to get those edits in. This is I don't know, third or fourth edit that I've done. Better of how that goes, but yeah, I'm looking. I do keep myself busy. I have things to do.
Yeah. How do you feel you'll be different coming out of this, and how do you hope we'll all be different coming out of this?
Well, I try to think that I am humble and grateful for every blessing that I have, and being a survivor. I mean, there's no greater blessing than that, because it could have gone a lot worse in having the virus. I think I'll try to be a little more patient, because I'm not known to have patience, but we'll have to be patient with one another. And getting things done, and understanding that everyone's space is different. And so the person that I knew pre-COVID-19 and how I dealt with them or worked with them may be very different coming after this, because I don't know what pain that they have suffered and what loss that they have suffered. And they may not even talk about it, but we have to be a little more open to being patient and being empathetic and having more compassion for people, and and taking it one day at a time. I think it's very difficult to plan so far ahead anymore, because plans are meant to be broken, but you still need to have a plan in place to accomplish something and setting goals. So I think goal setting will be something that will be a priority for me as to what I want to accomplish this week and what I want to accomplish next week. And then I'm gonna have to worry about next month, a couple weeks ahead.
Yeah. Well, Kat, we're so glad that you're well. That is the most important thing. I think particularly in our community, as long as we're healthy, we can handle the rest of the stuff. But the health piece is so essential. So very grateful that you recovered and that it wasn't too difficult for you. I know we're all praying for those who are struggling with it, whether as a caregiver, a loved one, or a person in the midst of it. We will get through this, will pass. Thanks for spending some time on the clock with me today, Kat.
Thanks for having me.
Made my day go a little bit faster. To everyone else, again, try not to watch the clock. Try to make the hours count. God bless you. Be well.